The first question is from Sergio Arispe. He says, "Hey guys, my question is: are Barca handling their post-Messi era better than Real Madrid handled their post-Ronaldo era? Barca now find themselves having to develop their promising young talents, and while they don't have any other choice due to their finances and the terrible shape of their club, isn't this ultimately the best way to deal with the departure of a Messi or a Ronaldo? Even with Messi in the team, Barca had been on the decline the prior 2 seasons. You are going to suck without your legends. So why not suck on purpose and develop the youth sooner so that you can get back on top sooner? Let me know what you think."
Well, suck or not to suck? That is the question. And I mean, I think there's no doubt that Barca right now um, are. Listen, to say that Barca sucks, I think, is not doing justice to the fine young talent that we are seeing. For me, it's more of a question of how has the front office, if you will, has the board really dealt with not just the departure of or let's say the dressing room heavyweights, the legends, as our patron put it, but also and the contracts, of course, but also just the entire infrastructure of the club and the way that the business was being conducted. I think that has had a much more of a detrimental impact than simply the aging of the squad at the moment. So, and say that because the football player currently under Xavi's supervision certainly do not suck, and that is, I guess, also why we have such high hopes that a great footballing mind, the likes of Xavi Hernandez, will get a lot more production out of these both young and old players. But I guess my question is, how is Laporta's team and how are the current board going to be dealing with the contracts that are some of the contracts that are still currently in place, and other aspects, more than sporting aspects, I would say business aspects. So really things that I have to deal more with off the pitch matters that are going to condition and determine how Barca, how the post Messi Barca will look like. Because me, from I guess a fan point of view, but also from what we've seen, what we've seen from the young players, what our eye test has told us, is that there is definitely certainly a very interesting crop of players that can at least be competitive, and that for me has always been the most fundamental, and it's been a point that I've reiterated time and time again on this podcast, is that I don't expect, it's not that we feel or I feel entitled to be winning titles season after season, but I do expect us to be competing for these titles. And as long as we see this team compete, and by that I mean seriously compete, by playing, good football, then I have to be satisfied with how things are being done also in the post-Messi phase. And that for me, starts today, really started with the acquisition of Xavi Hernandez. So I think right now it's premature to say how has this been handled, because Laporta, you can criticize him, I guess, for not having gotten rid of Koeman earlier. That's fair. But for me, the Laporta and Koeman era, or Xavi era, really starts now.
Yeah, it's a long-term project that has hope, that I think if Barca fans are patient with, it's an exciting pair, I would say. The word suck kind of threw me off as well, but I suppose, to be fair, I think a lot of now, I'm not saying this is necessarily the case with Sebastian who asked this question, but just more of a general point. I think a lot of fans who grew up watching Real Madrid and they're younger and they joined through Barca's, right, dream team with Pep. Not talking about the '90s dream team with Romario and all
Pep
those
team.
guys. But I'm just talking like the Pep's team plus the Real Madrid fans who grew up watching Ronaldo and Xabi Alonso and Benzema and Modric and Kroos. I think the standard for them is much higher than the average fan who's been around for
Right.
much longer. Whereas, like, I think the fans who have been around much longer, they've endured really bad seasons of both Real Madrid and Barcelona, and that stretched over multiple seasons and took them a long time to get back going and be among the lead again. So their standard for the word "suck" for them is like, just this rebuild who's in the top four. So I suppose they do suck compared to Pep's team, and Real Madrid do suck compared to the 3P team. So that's fair. But I do think, like, if you're talking about like the way Real Madrid and Barcelona handled their post-Stars era, it's not like either of them are like the gold standard of how to deal with it. I will say I think it's very difficult to navigate a situation like that when you lose your greatest player ever. I don't think that's easy for any team in any sport. Whether it's the Bulls losing Michael, that was the way they dealt with that was really bad. Whether it's Cleveland losing LeBron the first time, you're in shambles. It's not easy to navigate. But with hindsight and probably in the time, you could argue that Barca blowing the Neymar money on Dembele and all those, it's well documented. In the post-Messi era, it's too soon to even say what they did right and what they did wrong. He literally left like 2 months ago. And part of some of the stuff the things they decided, like signing Luke de Jong, for example, was more of a Koeman decision than a Barca decision, which they approved. And Real Madrid, you can argue that they've planned ahead maybe better, but that's even, we can't forget what the way they signed Eden Hazard, and now it's a disaster with that, the money they spent on Hazard. It's a complete, they just shot it in flames. They put gasoline and then they lit a pile of money just on fire, and it just evaporated. So it's not like they did that much better. And a lot of the young talents that Real Madrid had are gone. Whether it's, and Sergio also mentions that in a subsequent comment. People like Hakimi, Odegaard, Marcos Llorente, Reguilon, which, by the way, I would not rule out a Reguilon return now, because